Hello and welcome to the SX podcast. My name is Andrew Young. I'm the project lead of SX Network, along here with Coach Cryptos, my co-host. And the SX podcast is going to be a sort of semi-weekly podcast covering all the things that are happening in the SX Network world, projects on the SX Network blockchain, things that are happening in the sports world, and also covering the sort of DeFi ecosystem of both SX Network and abroad. So really excited to have you guys all here. And with that, I will pass it off to my co-host.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for the introduction. Excited about what we're kicking off here. I know this is kind of semi-replacing the community call. Hopefully, as we continue to share this podcast, we start to gain new community members, new people that are interested in XX and what we're building over there. And with that being said, for someone that might have stumbled upon this podcast for the first time, could you just really give that elevator pitch of what SX Network is and some of the arms that kind of stem off of it?
Yeah, so SX Network is the world's largest blockchain-based sports betting and political betting exchange in the world. Our core mission or ethos is to create a sort of sports betting platform that is entirely owned by the community, sort of the first community-owned sports betting platform. Our thesis is that the current sports betting and political betting companies in the world have this massive conflict of interest between the operators of the platform and the actual users of the platform. For the most part, operators of the platform, their profit is entirely related to how much their users lose money on their platform. The old saying is the house always wins.
Right.
And what we're trying to do with SX is just get rid of this conflict of interest by having the users actually be the house themselves. And the way that works is on SX Network, as you use the SX prediction market and betting exchange, you actually earn SX tokens, which represent ownership in the underlying platform and blockchain. And there's sort of three pieces to SX Network. There is sx.bet, which is the consumer-facing web dApp that people can interact with and bet with. It's a fully peer-to-peer betting platform, so it's kind of like a stock market for sports betting. And because it's a stock market, it allows people to get better odds because anyone can create their own lines and be the bookmaker themselves. And that sort of core front-end technology is built on the middle layer, which is the SX protocol, which is a fully open source smart contract protocol that allows anyone to create their own prediction markets and betting markets themselves, and sort of facilitates all of the transactions. And then finally, the last piece, which we're really excited about, and we'll talk a lot more about it on this podcast, is the actual SX Network blockchain, which is a EVM compatible proof of stake based blockchain that was just launched over the summer. And it's the first blockchain to go live using Polygon Edge. Polygon, as you guys know, is the largest Ethereum layer 2 in the world. And essentially, it's a permissionless blockchain that anyone can launch their own betting dApps and technologies on top of. So it's been we started this platform, I guess, almost 4.5 years ago. And we launched the very first iteration of SX, originally called SportX, as you can see on my shirt, in March 2019. And it's just been sort of a slow grind to continue building out the product, build out the community. And we're really starting to see a lot of growth over the last couple of months. So really excited to be here. And
Yeah, it's exciting times. Absolutely. Right now with SX Network and really the migration that just happened is, I don't want to say icing on the cake because the best is certainly yet to come right now. But I mean, that's such a huge deal. And, known you for a while, even from outside of this project, and you've said something I kind of thought was pretty profound. You were talking about the phases of blockchain technology, basically. And really quick, before we really dive into the migration itself, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, the Ethereum, then the L2s, and then kind of what we're into right now in this phase 3 sector or phase.
Yeah, for sure. So the way we sort of see the crypto and smart contract blockchain space playing out over the next couple of years is the first phase was Ethereum. So it's all about security and decentralization. And Ethereum was essentially the first major smart contract blockchain to get a lot of usage. The second era of smart contract blockchains is kind of where we are right now, which is it's all about scalability and having relatively inexpensive sort of transactions. So you're seeing that with the rise of things like Solana, Avalanche, and Polygon. And the third era is going to be, in our view, is going to be application-specific blockchains or industry-specific blockchains. So these are going to be blockchains that are essentially specifically customized for different use cases. And we see this as the third era. And we're really, really early into this era right now. And you're starting to see it a little bit with things like DYDX is creating their own blockchain. Osmosis is creating a chain specifically for DEXs. And Ronin is creating a chain for sort of play-to-earn games with Axie Infinity. And that's really what we're building with SX Network for the prediction market and sort of sports betting use case. And so, and the reason why is you can actually use the blockchain to build a better product experience for the end user. You can also use the chain to decentralize the entire backend in ways that you can't do if you were to just launch on a generic sort of one-size-fits-all chain. So really, really excited about this new era. And I would say we're very well ahead of the sort of where the industry is and having already built out the chain and actually having the application live on SX Network.
No question, man. You made a tremendous point, talking about how you can just better the user experience by creating those custom chains. And obviously fees are something that, a lot of people have transitioned from other chains, from Ethereum to, whether you're in DeFi or whatever, just to have lesser fees. And most people look at Polygon and say, hey, the fees aren't very high. But when you start talking about the amount of transactions, the amount of traffic that comes through on a platform like sx.bet, that becomes super important to even find ways to further lower those fees, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we initially launched SX on the Ethereum blockchain back in March 2019. And I actually remember having to send users ETH so they could even use the platform, which is crazy. It's actually it's crazy to see how much ETH we send people back when ETH was lower.
Yeah.
And then what happened is DeFi summer hit in 2020. Mm-hmm. And transaction costs on the Ethereum network went from sort of pennies on the dollar to hundreds of dollars. And this made SX sort of not feasible on the Ethereum blockchain because the average transaction size is only a couple $100. And so if you're spending $100 on gas, it's just not feasible. So we were very, very early to move to Polygon's POS chain. This was back in fall of 2020. I think we're maybe the first or second dApp on their entire chain. And that's been great. That allowed us to sort of continue growing, allowed us to hook into the rapidly growing Polygon community. But over the last couple of years, the cost of actually using Polygon have also gone up pretty dramatically. We were sort of looking at estimates. It looks like transaction costs on Polygon have gone up about 20,000 times. And it's still relatively cheap on Polygon. It's kind of up to the pennies per transaction. But we've sort of seen this show play out before where pennies per transaction suddenly become hundreds of dollars. And so we sort of proactively took the step over the last 6 months to build our own chain while still being hooked within the Polygon community by using Polygon's edge technology to actually build the chain. So we very much built this chain with Polygon. And so it sort of gives us the best of both worlds. We get sovereignty over our own sort of over our own usage and our own chain, but we still get to be partnered and collaborate with the Polygon community.
Absolutely, man. Well, we're here now. August 30th was the day of the migration. For the most part, everything went relatively smoothly. I know we're still ironing out a few kinks, just making sure we get everything completely migrated over. But all in all, how did it go, in your opinion, bringing sx.bet over to SX Network?
Yeah, so this was a huge migration, moving sx.bet from Polygon to SX Network. And the migration, I think, overall went okay. We were able to get it done within sort of the day that we were supposed to do it. A couple hours behind schedule, but for the most part, it was fine. And then we had one sort of minor outage for about an hour earlier in the week. And then besides that, it's really just been a lot of sort of small bugs that we've been sort of squashing one by one. At this point, we're pretty much through the list of bugs. We're looking at sort of bet mining and staking are the last couple ones that have yet to be sort of fully quashed. But for the most part, we've fixed mostly everything. Last night, we were actually able to fix the bet credits issue as well. So so it's been relatively smooth. I mean, a week later, volume was pretty much the same as pre-migration. It was down slightly, but that was also because the platform was down for a full day. And so it seems like, and we've also had huge bridge volume. We were actually the #1 chain by stablecoin migration growth last week, which is huge. And so things have been relatively good.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I know we've alluded to it upon the announcement of the SX migration, but there's some awesome things coming down the pipe. I don't know if you can preview anything or if we got to keep people waiting a little bit, but is there anything you can share as far as what's to come now that we've, are here now?
Yeah, I mean, the big goal for the next couple of months is really all about adoption. And so kind of coming off the core team did a Series A back in the spring. And so we've actually more than 2x our team size over the last couple of months. And we sort of stopped hiring, I would say, in the last couple of weeks. And so we've really had time to kind of grow as a team. And really, really excited about the next couple of months in terms of adoption. I think we're going to set new records across the board in terms of community adoption and sort of liquidity and usage. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited for the next 4 months. Everything's perfectly teed up, and now it's just time to execute.
Absolutely, man. Well, as anybody that's been in this crypto thing long enough, they know you can't have a bunch of trades and different tokens on a platform or on a network without having some liquidity. And so that kind of rolls us right into SharkSwap, which has, in my opinion, has been awesome kind of iteration. I know we obviously had an exploit back in June upon the initial launch, but since then the SharkSwap has been audited, relaunched, kicking off nice and smooth, 4 million TVL and counting. Just talk a little bit about SharkSwap and the relaunch and kind of where we're looking to see that thing go.
Yeah, totally. SharkSwap's been great. So SharkSwap is a sort of the leading DEX on SX Network. I should say the only DEX at the moment. And it's like a very well-designed UI, I believe. And one of the really cool things about SharkSwap is sort of the revolutionary thing about SharkSwap is it's a DEX that actually owns its liquidity. So what I mean by that is of the 4 million in TVL, I believe around 50% right now is actually TVL that's owned by SharkSwap itself.
Right.
So the SharkSwap treasury actually holds LP tokens itself, which is really cool because SharkSwap owns liquidity that is permanent. So this isn't liquidity that is sort of fleeting, that can just sort of look for better pastures in terms of liquidity mining and stuff like that. It's permanent liquidity that is always going to be there. And you can kind of look at it as almost like book value of SharkSwap. And then the second really cool thing about SharkSwap is it uses 50% of the trading fees from SharkSwap are actually used to automatically buy back and burn Shark. which I was just looking at the stats. I think in its first week alone, it burned about 50,000 shark, which is actually quite a bit. And so, yeah, I just think it's a very sort of economically sound DeFi platform, and the relaunch has gone relatively well. And so, and the big thing there is obviously as SX sees this huge uptick in adoption over the next couple of months, naturally people need to swap tokens because it's kind of like a core use case of a blockchain.
Right.
And so SharkSwap should see a pretty big uptick in volume as well. So I really see the success of SharkSwap tied to the success of SX itself.
Yeah, there's absolutely no question. And
I'm actually curious though, because I know you're a big liquidity farmer. I'm kind of curious, what farms on SharkSwap have you been sort of playing around in, and anything that you think the audience should check out?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think in terms of just being in quality projects, I mean, because this is right at this very moment, I think it's 4, maybe 5 tokens that are on there: SX, Ethereum, Matic, and Shark itself, and USDC, right? And so you talk about some quality tokens. So I'm actually in all 5 of them now. I love the dual rewards because basically I just I take my Matic and I stack it with something else. I take my USDC and stack it with something else. So I'm excited to see some more pairs come along. Like I said, I love the dual rewards. I think that's kind of a unique take. I know it's not the first time it's been done, but at the same time, it's not many major dexes that kind of provide that opportunity to earn Shark and Matic, or Shark and the native token, which you can take and move to sx.bet, which one of our community members pointed out. Ding ding ding, cool idea. So yeah, man, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm just looking at the APRs right now. Most of them are now below 75%. It looks like SX Matic is 72%, and then the number one is actually Shark USDC, which is 269% annualized, which is actually the one I think I'm partly in. So yeah, I think there's definitely opportunities across the board. I think over time the APRs should come down as more and more capital comes into SX network. But for the meantime, it's definitely a good place to farm.
Yeah, and with that too, as far as like the dropping APRs with more liquidity, as time passes, we're going to see more projects implement themselves on SX network. Obviously, more tokens, and that stuff just ends up getting kind of spread all over the place. So that's definitely exciting to see as you see more pairs, coming down the pipe. All right, so now let's transition to the community questions here. This is something that's always been important with your community calls. First one that we have, and I'm just going to kind of let them rip and let you roll on them. Are governance markets, are they over? And I know you're very passionate about talking about governance. So love to hear what you got to say on that.
Yeah, so governance in the blockchain space is a total mess. For the most part, these DAOs, which are essentially kind of like the on-chain treasury and core engine of these blockchain projects, and they essentially manage funds on behalf of the actual sort of DeFi platform itself. DAOs have billions of dollars in them right now, and in my opinion, and most people's opinion, how these DAOs allocate capital is incredibly suboptimal. For the most part, it is, in my opinion, it's sort of split into 3 groups right now. So the first group is essentially DAOs that don't have any governance at all. And this is typically the setup of highly decentralized projects that are more mature. So things like Ethereum or Bitcoin, they don't actually have a treasury to manage in the first place. It's sort of just an off-chain entity with like the Ethereum Foundation or something like that, which has worked okay, but it doesn't give token holders say over anything. And there's almost no transparency on how funds are managed. And so in my opinion, these types of informal governance processes aren't the best, particularly for new and emerging blockchain projects that really need sort of governance to actually succeed. The second camp in the governance space is just pure token holder voting. So this is kind of the standard across most DeFi projects today. And it's okay. Essentially what it means is a couple people put out almost all of the proposals, and then a small percentage of token holders, typically the ones with the largest holders, will vote on whether that proposal should pass or not. The reason why this is subpar is that you don't get very good participation. It's kind of like rule by oligarch. And it also disincentivizes small token holders from participating because there's kind of no incentive. But it's better because at least there's some transparency on how things are done. And then finally, the new governance sort of model, you'll see it a lot in Polkadot projects, are sub-DAOs and committees. So essentially, you have a DAO, it creates a budget for almost like a sub-DAO, which is a small team, which then works on behalf of the greater DAO to sort of forward a certain aspect of the project. I think this out of the three is the best, but it has led to some centralization concerns. It also creates this stakeholder within the network that wants to obviously further the progress of the project itself, but also has now an incentive to just continue accruing salaries and stuff like that, with relatively little oversight compared to traditional company structures. So within these three groups, there's a fourth theoretical governance model that has been talked about a lot from people like Vitalik and some of the top crypto sort of developers in the world. And that's actually using prediction markets to decide how treasuries should be spent. And the way it works, we call these governance markets. And the way it works is for a specific objective, say it's to increase TVL of SharkSwap from 4 million to 10 million. That's kind of like the Y outcome. We are going to do X proposal. So the proposal could be, let's spend, I don't know, $200,000 of Shark tokens in liquidity mining rewards to get to $10 million of TVL by the end of this month. And then what you can do is, because these are quite sort of objective on-chain metrics that are easy to see, and anyone can bet on them. You actually create a betting market on whether X proposal will lead to Y outcome. And the outcome of the betting market, so whether the yes shares trade higher than the no shares, determines whether the proposal is actually implemented. If the proposal is implemented, everyone's bets are locked in. And essentially, if the outcome is achieved, the people who bet yes on the proposal win, and the people that bet no lose, and vice versa. So it creates essentially a betting market on whether proposals will lead to desired outcomes. It doesn't work for everything. It needs to be outcomes that are unambiguous, ideally on-chain, and can't really be gamed economically, at least. That actually covers quite a wide space of how governance is done. So we actually had our first governance market last year. We've been doing a ton of research into them. We actually have a couple that we had lined up for SharkSwap prior to the exploit in June. Mm-hmm. And now that SharkSwap's back up and things are sort of moving again, we're definitely going to experiment with them a little bit more in the fall, to give sort of a long-winded way of answering that question.
Yeah, that's awesome that you did, because the DAO, that term has become so like just a buzzword. You have a project, you throw DAO on the back of it, and all of a sudden everybody thinks it's truly decentralized, and nothing had really changed. Once again, I'm a DeFi guy. You saw Olympus DAO, you just saw these projects, and it was still just kind of the developer and the team just ultimately making all the decisions. This is a awesome way to integrate what we do anyways on SX network. So yeah, I love to hear that, man. Now, I just want to transition to the next question here. Can the site continue if, we're talking about sx.bet, continue if USDC is no longer trustworthy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that question was prompted from the sanctions on Tornado Cash a couple of weeks ago. It created a lot of fear within the market, especially for tokens like USDC. So I think, for right now, I still have trust, I think, in USDC, and most DeFi platforms still have USDC as kind of the dominant stablecoin within them. But I understand the concern. but I guess the main counter, or the way to answer this question really, is just that there are a sort of bevy of other stablecoins. DAI being the main one that people have looked to, though DAI has sort of given up a lot of its value prop by actually having USDC as its main backing, which I don't totally understand why they did that. But there are other stablecoins, like for example, MAI, which is the stablecoin issued by QDAO, is fully crypto collateralized, and I think is run by a very, very good team. They have, I think, over $100 million in TVL, and it's been operating without any errors for, I think, over a year now. So there's going to be newer and sort of more crypto collateralized, fully decentralized stablecoins that sort of proliferate. And so if the community wants, we can definitely switch over from USDC as the dominant stablecoin to something like that.
Absolutely. And then you can use your governance markets to make the vote if that's, something we want to look at. And MAI is also a team that, or QDAO, excuse me, or is a team that I think is originally launched on Polygon. They've kind of branched out to other chains as well, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, 100%. And we've talked to them quite extensively. I think I quite like their team and their project, and obviously fits really well because it is sort of a Polygon-based project. And so us being the sort of first and only Polygon edge chain to go live, there's a very clear natural fit between the two.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, transition to the next question here. We made the migration, had an awesome article in CoinDesk, I believe, about, is sports betting and crypto, is it ready to go big time? So I asked, or I guess one of our community members asked, are we ready to go big time? Are we ready for the big time?
Yeah, I would actually answer that question for the first time in 5 years, affirmatively, yes. I think on the sx.bet side, everything is ready to go. I think the app is, it's still not where I think it can be and will be, but it's sort of above the baseline level where I think a lot of experienced sort of prediction market traders and sports bettors would like it. And with the recent change to lower fees for makers, I also think we're expecting to see an explosion in liquidity over the next couple of months as well. And so we'll have incredibly deep order books, as well as a product that works relatively well on its own chain. And so I think we're essentially ready to go.
Yeah.
And now with sort of the recent additions to the core team, we actually also have the human capital ready to really push the platform forward. So I'm really, really excited for the next couple of months. I think I'm expecting us to hit it big time, I guess, over the next sort of 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, and the timing on the migration, I mean, was not by accident by any means, in my opinion. I mean, you talk about August 30th, right before you get college football, NFL football, basketball season will be around the corner. Baseball's rolling, tennis is going. I mean, I saw we recently released the August numbers, the August metrics, and we're looking to see September. I don't know what your opinion is, but be well beyond that, especially on our own chain. So no doubt about it, man. Now, next question, moving forward, sx.bet. Having that SDK, the opportunity to, allow others to use it. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just to kind of, the way I understand this question is the idea of allowing anyone to launch their own front ends that are built into the sort of SX smart contract protocol. Another word for this is almost like liquidity sharing, because you can create this network of liquidity that any other apps can plug into. And theoretically, we could even, you could have open source front ends so that anyone can launch their own sportsbook or even exchange themselves and just plug into this ready-made sort of market registry and liquidity. So I'm really excited about that. We're not there yet, to be honest with you. I think the next 4 to 6 months, we really need to drive growth for the chain and the platform first. But I think that is something kind of longer term that is a really kind of exciting growth catalyst for SX. And definitely something that I think we can be the sort of worldwide leader in.
Absolutely. Kind of moving on to the next question. SX launching on Binance Smart Chains, Solana, these other chains. You've seen a uptick in tokens that are, been dedicated to launching on multiple chains. What's your thought process on that?
Yeah, so we've always been against multi-chain approach if it fragments liquidity, because I think that leads to a worse user experience. But with that being said, we've actually been doing some research, and there is a way to actually launch SX on over 25 chains, but having all of the transactions settle on SX network itself. And so this means that we can create like a fully interchain application that has all of the liquidity centered in SX network, but allows us to plug in and get the distribution of all these other chains if they're EVM compatible, which I think is actually incredibly exciting. It's one of the things that it's not on our short-term roadmap, but it, again, sort of like the sx.bet SDK, it's something that we've done some research into, and we have sort of the first rough outlines of how it could work. So yeah, I think like, and it's also one of the really big advantages of having your own chain, because we have a very clear permanent home. And so if we can hook into these other chains, we can drive all of that activity and liquidity to just one specific spot, which I think is really, really exciting. And it does so in a way that it actually boosts our network effects rather than actually hurting them by splitting up liquidity. So there's more to come there. I don't think it's not a sort of 1 to 3 month thing, but it's definitely something we're going to put out more stuff about over time.
Well, it's crazy how, like, if we have this conversation 2 years ago, I would say you're out of your mind. I mean, just it used to be so hard to get from Ethereum just to Polygon, from Polygon to Binance Smart Chain, and you had to go to a centralized exchange. And, it was just so many hoops. And now these bridges have made everything seamlessly. And it sounds like we're going to kind of continue to move forward, especially as more people, as you mentioned, that kind of phase 3 in the blockchain networks. As we enter that, and there's just chains all over the place, you're just going to see funds be able to move a lot more freely around chains. With that being said, another community question was when SX, USDC, F been able to bridge back to Polygon, which I believe 2 of those already exist. So I think the SX and SX USDC going back from SX to Polygon.
Yeah, this is a great question. This is kind of like one of the things that people have brought up a lot. So right now you can bridge from Polygon and Ethereum into SX, but then bridging USDC and ETH, you can only bridge it back to Ethereum, unfortunately. Right. So that's just a quirk of how Sealer works, which is the main bridge that we're using, their C bridge. So what we have to do is build a custom bridge back to Polygon, which is something that is sort of on our short-term roadmap, because I know that's sort of a pain point for a lot of people. Yeah, I don't have an exact ETA, but I would just say it's something that everyone has sort of brought up to the core team, and so we're very aware that it would be a big value add.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, soon. So stay tuned on that deal. Moving forward, obviously, you have this big merge coming on Ethereum. And all these unique things that kind of initially stemmed off Ethereum. You actually had this EIP 1559 style of burning, the way they burn fees and things like that on Ethereum. Do we see anything like that coming to SX?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually already have burning on SX. So all fees that are generated from SX denominated bets, so not USDC or Ether, but actual SX token denominated bets, all the fees from those are actually burnt. And I think we're actually up to around 275,000 SX that's been burnt. It's roughly around 20,000 SX per week right now, which is actually pretty substantial. If we can continue to increase betting volumes, that actually be like a very high percentage. Roughly right now, it's about 75 basis points of the total circulating supply is burnt per year. But we can also do EIP, so 1559 style burning. So where transaction fees on SX network chain would actually be burnt too. It's not a big priority right now because transaction fees on SX network are very low. So it wouldn't really contribute that much, but it's definitely something that could be implemented later on when it's more viable.
Yeah, and as anybody that's been around this long enough knows as time passes, the fees begin to get a little bit more hefty. And hefty, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, kind of about Polygon. So maybe at some point in time when it becomes a little more relevant, right? Last question here for you. Are there any other ideas to distribute fees to stakers? And if you don't mind, just sharing the current ways that stakers can kind of earn fees.
Yeah, so right now stakers earn essentially inflationary rewards from the community fund. I believe the yield right now is around 17%. And you can get a slight boost on that if you also validate the chain. But all the fees at the moment essentially go to the community fund and aren't distributed to stakers. I do envision a scenario where in the future, stakers or validators and stakers actually earn the fees that are generated in USDC and Ether from sort of betting and things like that. We're actually working on a fairly substantial roadmap, which includes kind of the first steps towards this. We're calling it the SX merge. It's not fully fleshed out yet, but we will be releasing it actually in the next couple of weeks so people can see the long-term roadmap. I'm incredibly excited by it. I think this is actually the most sort of ambitious thing we're going to be doing yet. It's effectively merging the sx.bet betting platform with the SX network blockchain itself to create a fully decentralized and fully distributed end-to-end sports betting, blockchain-based sports betting platform. And with that change, validators will be taking on new responsibilities. And so therefore they should be also rewarded extra for taking on these new responsibilities. So without giving away too much, I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be also sort of a revolutionary change to the tokenomics of SX. And I think the community is going to be pretty excited about it. At the end of the day, though, it's going to be up to the community to sort of implement a lot of this stuff. And so we're going to put out roadmaps and try to build consensus within the community. But I think it's something that everyone's going to be really excited about. So I guess stay tuned for more is the end of that.
Well, that's a bet, man. This has been a fun opportunity to sit down and chop it up with you and hopefully answer some community questions, get people excited about what's to come. Look forward to doing it with you here in a couple of weeks. Well, before we go, I got to ask one sports question. NFL season starting this weekend. It got a major tourney going on SX.bet, so make sure you guys tune into that. Who's your NFL squad? Who do you roll with?
Yeah, so I'm Ravens Nation. So let's get the Ravens going.
There you go. I like it, man. I'm impartial. I like just watching good football, but if I'm a Texas guy, so I guess I'll just say the Cowboys, but that doesn't usually end well for me. Anyways, man, I enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Look forward to meeting with you guys next time.